Welcome to the German Marshall Fund of the United States, and we are live at the Lithuanian Embassy here in Washington. My name is Heather Conley, President of the German Marshall Fund, and we have an exceptional opportunity to speak with Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister, for being with us. I'm so glad we are doing this here, because we are honoring this year 100 years of diplomatic relations between the United States and Lithuania. And this place is very important, this embassy, because it was the original legation and that the United States never recognized the Soviet occupation of Lithuania. I think that's an important moment for us to honor and make sure that we never recognize Russia's occupation of Ukraine or Georgia. So this is a really important moment. Congratulations for being here on our 100th anniversary of our diplomatic relations. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. And yes, this is a very symbolic year. And many things happened during those 100 years. There were years, unfortunately, where the diplomatic relations were not executed, given that the occupation was limiting Lithuania's capacity to be a subject of the international relations, but definitely the fact of non-recognition of occupation of Baltic states was always something that was a very important source of hope in the hearts of our people. And we knew that the free world did not recognize the occupation. And once the opportunity was there, our country was reborn. And I'm really proud to be part of it.
Well, I think the power of hope, that message of hope, that confidence, something that's in our DNA from the Marshall Plan 75 years ago, and it has to be present today. So let's turn to Ukraine. We're entering the 10th month of this war. The Ukrainian forces have won the Battle of Kyiv. They have won the Battle of Kharkiv and Kherson, and liberating those cities. We're now in the winter campaign, and we're seeing trench warfare, incredible intensity of operations in Bakhmut. We're seeing Ukraine successfully hitting Russian supply lines, even quite deeply into Russia, and Russia attacking Ukrainian civilian energy infrastructure. How do you see the war unfolding in this winter campaign? Madam Prime Minister, what is your vision of victory for Ukraine, and what is your vision for Russia's defeat?
Well, I think that for a couple of months already, we understand that Russia is doing very poorly on the battlefield, and nothing seems to help it, because even with mobilization, with new people that are thrown at the front just to close,
literally,
yes, like a meat for cannon, you know, like they say in themselves, who are just coming there to die. We see that the progress is non-existent. But Russia is a terrorist state. So what they do instead of admitting defeat, they rearrange their attack against those who cannot fight. And this is civilian people, this is infrastructure and everything that people need for their daily lives. So this new wave of shelling, new wave of airstrikes throughout the territory of Ukraine simply points to the fact that Russia is not fighting a regular war, despite the fact it started this invasion. Once it realized that, you know, it's not going according with the plan, so they started to turn to their usual tactics that they used in Syria, that they used in other places, where you attack the civilian population. And what is the point of this? The point of this is to create misery in Ukraine, to provoke or to press people to come to their government and say, stop fighting. But this is a very wrong understanding of how Ukrainians feel, because I was in Kyiv 10 days ago. And, you know, you see this dark windows, you see this very complicated situation. You understand that people have no water, no heat, no electricity. You see those tents in the middle of the city where people come to charge their phones and sort of warm up a little bit. But you also feel that it's resolve, and the sentiment among the population is absolutely different. I mean, there is no room for sort of giving up or anything, and I understand that this is the sentiment that the population feels. They are not leaving, even despite the fact that the conditions are quite miserable, and this is one of the Putin's part of the Putin's plan, because he wants to create a new wave of migration and to press European countries sort of to do something about it, because he wants ceasefire. Now there is lots of those debate about peace and negotiations and everything. Russia does not want negotiations. It wants to fix whatever it is now on the front as a fait accompli, just for the sake of getting some time. And for that, they use all sorts of pressure against African and Asian countries by using food as weapon, against European countries by using energy as weapon, also by trying to create a new wave of migration. So absolutely, this is a war crime from there to there, just one big war crime. And if we speak about peace, then it's not for me or for neither of us to say what is peace. It's just for Ukrainians to say. But I know that if there are any half-baked solutions, then those half-baked solutions will never bring peace to Europe.
Absolutely. Have you been encouraging in your conversations here in Washington with senior officials in the Biden administration, have you been encouraging them to think about declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism? There's certainly been a lot of bipartisan support on that on Capitol Hill.
Well, I think we will have an opportunity to discuss this, but there was a recent decision of European Parliament. And of course, this decision does not sort out the problem, but it states a political attitude towards this. Because what is Russia if not a terrorist state? It is not fighting a war. It is trying to humiliate the population of Ukraine in all the atrocious ways one can think of. And this is terrorism. This is not war.
Absolutely. Let me turn, as you mentioned, the weaponization of migration. I think one element that we're not focusing as much attention as we should is the role that Belarus is playing in the war. And there was some very strange reporting over the last few days of Russian Defense Minister Shoigu landing quite suddenly and meant some hurried documents. Of course, this very mysterious death of the Belarusian foreign minister. Again, speculation, we don't know. But we sort of see this creeping annexation, if you will, without official declaration of Belarus. And this is really very impactful for Lithuania's security, NATO security. How do you see this evolution of role of Belarus being just a part of Russia militarily for this conflict?
It was happening for quite some time already, not just this year, because they were having this complicated debate about union state, where Lukashenko was doing all he could to sort of promise and never deliver. But
fine balancing act.
Well, you can call it this way. But on the military side, there was always a very clear situation. They were part of two parts of one. They had the same military doctrine. They had common drills. And each time they had this drill Zapad close to our borders, we were sort of not feeling very comfortable. And we were pointing to the fact that Belarusian military part of the country is a part of Russia, as a matter of fact. The army, the commandment, and the logistics and everything. And now we see it very clearly in 2022 when the invasion started, because the invasion started from the soil of Belarus. So, and there was drills before, and those drills all of a sudden were transferred into invasion. So now Belarus is being used very widely for training of mobilized people. One might call that training because, it's
Quick training.
It's a very quick training, yes. But given that Russia does not have premises and infrastructure it needs for train this amount of people, so they are sending people over to Belarus where they are being trained, and we know that there are maybe around 10,000 people who are on training now and will be sent to front to Ukraine. And Lukashenko is participating in this. I mean, he is accomplice to Putin in this war. Of course, there is this debate whether Belarus will participate directly with its military personnel. And this is a tricky part of the question, because contrary to Russia, where we know that, unfortunately, the major part of population is either supportive or indifferent, in Belarus, the idea of participation in the war is not popular, and Lukashenko knows that. So for him, it is a very complicated balancing act.
Something for us to certainly watch. So moving forward, Lithuania is going to be the proud host of the next NATO summit, July 11th and 12th. I'd love to talk a little bit about outcomes for that NATO summit. So the last summit in Madrid in July had the announcement that there will now be multinational brigades put forward in each of the 3 Baltic states. Certainly Lithuania has dramatically increased its defense spending, 2.52%. As a former finance minister, you know that's not easy. As a former member of the Lithuanian Parliament, you know those are tough political decisions. You have requested more U.S. military equipment, HIMARS, and other essentials. Help us understand both Lithuania's defensive capabilities, what it needs more of, and how does this play into the summit next year, because all NATO members made a commitment by 2024 to reach 2%. Yep. Lithuania is already there. Many others are, but we have some that aren't. Germany just announced that they will not be at that 2% by 2024. Help us understand what you'd like to accomplish at next year's summit as a member of NATO.
I think that this has 2 dimensions. I mean, each member state of NATO has to do its own homework. So I think this year or next year, 2023, we might be somewhere between 2.5 and 3, depending on what will be the agreements about the infrastructure that is needed for enlargement of the presence of our partners on the ground, but also the military mobility projects, because we have quite a lot of projects in the pipeline. So this is our homework, and of course we need to make new purchases, sign new contracts, buy new equipment, military equipment, weapons. But the problem is that with everybody doing that at the same time, it is, as I say, a classical demand shock, because industry that should match it on the production side, of course, is has not expanded their capacity so much as to meet this sudden increase of attention towards defense and spending. So this is, I think, the right track. It's good that countries are changing their attitude, even the countries who were not doing that for many years. But of course, this has implications on what are the waiting queues to get one thing or another from the companies, because this is then a challenge for the companies to adjust. But I think in a couple of years there will be a sort of a new equilibrium, as economists would say, in this market of military equipment. But there is also the collective part to this, not only individual but also collective. And on this collective part, I think what was agreed in Madrid is very important, because, well, there is no more this esoteric debate whether Russia is a threat. It is a threat. Everybody knows that. And now what can we do about it? And the strengthening of eastern flank, the statement of the plans of strengthening of eastern flank, of course, should be now sort of beefed up with very precise planning and very precise commitments. How do we get there? And I think what is important is that we would make no mistake thinking that seeing that Russia is doing poorly on the battleground, that changes security calculations a lot. And I think this is important. So this is one part of the agenda that will be most probably discussed during Vilnius summit. Also, we must discuss about Ukraine.
That was exactly where I was going. That's the trickiest topic. There's not consensus in the alliance, and you have now a very, very vocal and active Ukrainian government saying, "I want rapid membership, just like Sweden and Finland. I want in fast."
Well, hopefully, Finland and Sweden. Yeah, fingers crossed. But we will have this question concluded by the Vilnius summit. Something I hope. Are
you encouraged? You think Hungary and Turkey will be able to accomplish that before July of next year?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
And I hope that wisdom of the partners will prevail over whatever other calculations that might be in the calculus for a moment. But for Ukraine, of course, we are supportive. We were always supportive. I will not hide that it is a position, I think, of many politicians in Lithuania that not to give Ukraine a membership action plan in 2008 was not the good decision. Of course, then we were afraid, or some of our partners were afraid of how Russia will react. But now we see how Russia reacts with no membership action plan or anything. So this is not a factor that we should take into account. But nonetheless, of course, you still need a consensus around the table to reach an agreement. So we have to find solution how not to disappoint Ukraine, I would say. And it is crucially important, because what needs to be ensured is that there is no even hint, no even sort of smallest argument to think that Russia can somehow impact NATO's decisions on enlargement, and that it can push some countries out of the membership they want for themselves. But of course, the practical implementation will be much more complicated than what I can just imagine in my best dreams.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've always said the center of gravity is transatlantic unity, is European unity. And we're starting to feel some of the cracks. I mean, some of that's 10 months of strain. Yesterday, the Hungarian government blocked an 18 billion euro support package for Ukraine of needed macroeconomic assistance for next year. We've talked about Hungary and Turkey right now blocking Sweden and Finland's ratification of their accession protocols. We've had, a real acrimony between Warsaw and Berlin for a variety of reasons. And of course, the blocking of Poland sending patriots to Ukraine. So help us understand the fragility, or perhaps the strength of European and transatlantic unity, and how critical that will be as we, the road to Vilnius next year for the summit.
Well, it's just critical, but I think that everybody understands that, because when I compare the intensity of debate that we have now, we have issues where, 27 member states or other grouping of countries like in the Transatlantic community. Well, it is not easy to have a unanimity on all the items that are on the table. Sometimes you need more time. Sometimes you need to give in just to have an agreement. We had this debate about oil price cap that some of the countries, including mine, thought was too high for the current situation. But I mean, there was an alternative not to have an agreement and debate for next 2 weeks, or to have an agreement which is not perfect, but it is an agreement which is G7 and European Union and all the democratic countries are around the table. So, well, then somebody has to move. And in those situations, sometimes you need time, sometimes you need concessions. Well, it's a democratic world where consensus is a usual way of operation. Of course, it's hard to debate about consensus when you know that people are dying somewhere every day and they are being killed and they are being attacked. So of course there is a push for quicker agreements on the critical questions. But I think so far transatlantic community is doing very well, because it was something Putin was never expecting to happen, first instance. And I don't know if everybody in the transatlantic community was expecting this sort of unity. So regardless of the cases where some countries are taking hostage some issues, usually for their own questions that are related to their own situation, it's not good. I mean, this is for me, this is very, very painful to understand, because I still think about people in Ukraine and sort of cannot buy it. But at some point, there is a solution always. So I'm confident that it will remain this way.
And there's no concern, because certainly we're starting to hear a little bit of the great bipartisanship here in Washington for Ukraine started to crack as we entered the midterm elections. Again, you're feeling confident that this may be politics, but that there's strong bipartisan American support for Ukraine. Well,
again, I hope for American support to remain as strong as it is. And I know that this is bipartisan. So I know that there are always politicians who would have a different opinion or some particular arguments or some particular requests. But I sometimes think that, the differences might not be as big as we reflect on sort of public sources or media. Because one thing we should be very mindful, Russia will always use whatever internal debate for its own purposes. And I think in many cases, they are using this internal conflict, or this internal debate about something against ourselves, because then they are saying, look, there is no unity. So let's wait and see how that all cracks. And it does not. So I think we should stay calm, as they say, and support.
Stay calm and carry on. Absolutely, absolutely. And our last few minutes, I'd like to turn. We obviously talked about great power competition with Russia. Let me turn to China, because Lithuania has certainly been in the news for its very bold stance and support of Taiwan. And certainly created some tensions within the European Union. So I'm going to sort of reverse the question a little bit. Did you, in hindsight, did Lithuania's decision create sort of internal turmoil within the European Union that, the European Union had to sort of catch up to Lithuania's very bold decision about putting representational offices in both Taiwan and Lithuania? Or do you think in some ways it was an example of strengthening EU unity on an issue on China, which there is great division amongst EU member states about how forward-leaning they should be on the Taiwan question?
Well,
I know there's a lot in there.
Yeah. First, I must stress that, many countries do have representative offices. 14
countries?
Yeah, and they have offices in their capitals, and also their offices in Taipei. And so why shouldn't Lithuania do the same? This I don't know. I know that it happened after a very long break, but I think this is a sovereign decision of a member state to encourage the economic ties with Taiwan, social ties, and all other contacts. And there was nothing incredible about the fact that there was a office opened in Vilnius and now office opened in Taiwan. So this is the first line of argumentation. But then when we come to what happened next, I think that at some point EU member states realized that China's coercive tactics was an interference into something that is not bilateral relations, but what is EU policy, because single market is something what is a sort of a basement for EU, for the functioning of EU, and this is an exclusive competence of European Union to ensure that single market functions. So when a country outside the European Union tries to bully some member states via sort of interfering into what is single market, where companies invest, where they buy their components from, and this sort of decisions. So this is not exactly the situation that should be comfortable for European Union, and that was our line of argumentation, sort of in raising awareness that this is not, a sort of bilateral issue anymore. It is an issue of third party interfering into EU's domestic affairs. And given that there was a thinking in many countries, including my country, as a matter of fact, that there might be bilateral debate with China. I think that this situation proved that the best strategy for European countries is to have 27 and 1, because then you have a parity in the debate. Because when countries do think that they can sort of deal with the big regimes that are not democratic in a direct way and sort out all the problems, sort of whatever happens, look at Germany and Russian gas. It does not work. So when you have a European position on one side and then China as a partner on the other side, then this debate will be definitely much more balanced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the German Marshall Fund just finished a study tour, a transatlantic study tour to Taiwan. And I can tell you, we need to continue to work very hard to strengthen the transatlantic approach to greater diversification and to help Taiwan to be able to defend itself, should that be the case. So there is much more work to be done, and Lithuania is a very important voice in that conversation for sure. Well, Madam Prime Minister, this has been a 30-minute intensive but important conversation. We know you're going to have some very important meetings today where you will be discussing, I'm sure, all of these issues. I will say, I think that the two comments that I pull away from our conversation is, wisdom will prevail, confidence will prevail, but at the very end, hope will prevail, and to the essential nature that we have to give that message of hope and support to Ukraine. So thank you, Madam Prime Minister, for this conversation. And we thank our colleagues for joining us. And we wish you the very best in your meetings today and returning back home and meeting with your other two Baltic Prime Minister colleagues as you're from Washington to Riga. The unity and the important work continues. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, my pleasure.